Azure Striker Gunvolt, or Arm Blue Gunvolt, is a series that I've been following and playing since the first game dropped all the way back in 2014 on the Nintendo 3DS eShop, and honestly, I've been obsessed with the series ever since. The developers of the Gunvolt franchise, Inti Creates, is known for working on the Mega Man Zero and ZX series, which are also some of my favorite 2D games, and just like those games, the Gunvolt series rewards very stylish gameplay and execution given its ranking system. With 5 Gunvolt games released with Luminous Avenger X2 and Gunvolt 3 releasing last year as the latest titles, I wanted to make a video finally showing off how you can improve your gameplay while also sharing some tech that you may or may not have known or used while playing. I recommend you watch till the end of the video, as I will try my best to break down everything that you will need to know to improve your gameplay experience and get those S+, X, and S++ ranks. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, support the channel as I plan to make Gunvolt content on this channel more apparent, and if you want to ask me any questions, I'll be willing to answer any of them. Before we get started, I want to give credit to another seasoned Gunvolt player by the name of Lancer for his Google spreadsheet with basically everything including S+ requirements, boss tips, and so on that you want to know that I may or may not cover in this video. Link will be in the description as well as their YouTube channel. Another thing I want to mention is that when it comes to achieving high score runs in this game, you don't have to be absolutely perfect when it comes to these games. Some of these games you can actually S+ by playing on the easiest difficulty, but for the sake of this video, I'll be looking at the highest difficulty of each game. Lastly, I will not be covering Zed because I haven't really dabbled with his playstyle, plus Attempt's epilogue doesn't have that many stages that I could cover him, but if you guys really want me to make a video about him, I'll be willing to do so. Same with Kieran XX, as I won't be covering her. But anyways, let's talk about the universal tech and tips that I have for you guys. I honestly don't know if this has a term or not, but I'm going to make up one for the sake of this video, called Gunvolt Shuffle. Gunvolt Shuffle is basically stunning an enemy repeatedly to extend combos. This tech is pretty much used in any S+ run to get more kudos than you would regularly be able to if you were to just flat out kill an enemy rather than shuffling to another set of enemies and killing them in groups. For Gunvolt, this tech is much more useful because of his playstyle focusing on killing multiple enemies in one combo. As for Acura, you only really use this to stall for your EX meter or to set up a guard counter EX, which I will cover when we get to Gunvolt 2. Weakening enemies is also important to get more kudos that you want before killing an enemy. Next up is Kudos boosters. Kudos boosters like Lethal Leviar for Gunvolt, Heaven or Hell X for Acura, and any image posted in 3 that increases your kudos gains, which are only usable in normal and hard mode, are good ways to gain more kudos in stages that you would regularly not be able to obtain if you want to get these high scores. If you want to craft these, refer to Lancer's spreadsheet or the Gunvolt wiki. I think this is an obvious one, but after weakening a boss for a good amount of health, you always want to use an SP attack to get extra kudos bonus. In Gunvolt 3, your kudos will not reset as the kudos system has been changed a little, but for every game, always SP attack the bosses that you are fighting. For Acura, you want to use an EX skill for mid bosses. For Gunvolt, in Gunvolt 2, you want to use stuff like Crash Bolt or Dragon Sphere. And obviously for Kieran, you want to use your special attack. Last but not least, I wanted to cover checkpoints. Checkpoints are very strong tools to practice levels as well as getting high score runs. Treat it like a save state that you can use if you mess up or you want to figure out or find things that you normally wouldn't think of doing in the level. Practicing your execution is always key to improvement and better results. Now with that out of the way, let's get started with the game that started it all. Gunvolt 1 is a funny game in my opinion, in the sense of if you play it the way it was intended, then getting some of these scores can be tricky. But if you want to cheese it, well, we'll get to that part. Now, don't get me wrong, Gunvolt 1 is still a really good game, and the gameplay is still kick-ass. But I feel like once you figure out the most broken combo in this game, you will have no problem getting S+s in the game. Overkill Kudos is more so applied to Spark Caliber and Voltic Change, because the reason Lightning Spear doesn't really work for this is due to the multi-hits of it. Overall damage, and the only amount you get for overkilling is 10, while Lux in Chains gives plus 200. You obviously want to do this when the boss is weakened enough during the boss fight, and Chains his damage just like 200, and if you add more targets on the field, it's plus 50. Fun fact, Joda's lasers also count as enemies separately, which I find it funny because you can actually kill them even faster if you do so. The special missions are known for being the most difficult levels in Gunvolt 1, and maybe some in the whole series. The bosses are determined on what the stage layout you are playing on during the stage. But something people might not know is that you can actually control which boss you face by holding up or down while or after you break the final gate. I'm not sure which one it is. I think it's the one after you break it or before. I think it's the one after. I'm pretty sure it's the one after. But that's one piece of advice for you if you want to fight the lesser of two evils while doing these missions. I mean, honestly, one of the missions has Asimov as one of the bosses. And Asimov's known to stall. Not fun. That's not fun. Special skill spamming is a very viable tactic, but it's also pretty lame because of the simple fact that you don't have to put any effort into doing it. What makes this exploit really effective is that there really is no punishment for spamming special skills in this game. If multiple enemies are killed by one special attack, it will net you a good amount of kudos. Voltic Chain is a mega offender of the tactic, especially if you equip it with Adrenaline Lens, which makes it so that you don't use a single SP skill slot, which you can use on Septimal Surge. Then you can pop Voltic Chain, kill a bunch of enemies, and then net the kudos that you need to cash in for the S+. Special Mission 1 and Special Mission 4 are the funniest ways to use this because they actually hand it to you on a silver platter if you know how to do it. Iridu is also another stage with a lot of enemies that's allowed you to do this. But yeah, that's basically all the stuff for Gunvolt 1. I'm going to be talking about GV's gameplay more in Gunvolt 2 because I feel like that game makes it more essential that you have to play Gunvolt the way he has to be intended to play. Gunvolt 2 is what a lot of people consider to be the best Gunvolt game in the whole series, and honestly, I can agree with that. This game is just amazing in every way. Okay, story not so much in my opinion, but everything else is great. GV's gameplay is pretty identical to Gunvolt 1 with some changes, but we get the introduction of Acura, who plays different compared to Gunvolt. Now let's talk about the changes from Gunvolt 1 to Gunvolt 2. In Gunvolt 2, you can no longer SP attack cheese to get the S+ in the game. You are only SP attacking to only really cash in kudos. Obviously that doesn't mean you can't use the special attacks, but now it isn't just Voltic Chain the whole game and get the highest rank. Another thing too is that they gave Gunvolt clips, now making it so that every dart in the game can now be maximized to 8, which makes some darts like Technos and Vasuki way more valuable than what they were in Gunvolt 1. Gunvolt in this game isn't super changed from Gunvolt 1. He's obviously the same character where you want to kill enemies in groups rather than kill them one by one. While you could apply this stuff to Gunvolt 1, obviously, this stuff is much more important in Gunvolt 2 because you actually have to play the game, using darts and getting multi-kills. I think a lot of people can safely say that Gunvolt from a casual standpoint doesn't look too technical, but when you're doing score attack runs, high score runs, or DLC stages, the game will be asking a good amount from you. Taking out enemies in doubles, triples, or higher is all about using Gunvolt Shuffle, moving enemies around by rapidly stunning them with your flash field and weakening enemies who have higher health to be able to kill other enemies in groups. If you can't kill an enemy with the others, that's fine. Find another group to put them with and kill them there. The darts I would recommend mainly in this game are Cerberus, Vasuki, Technos, and Naga, as all of them are pretty good. But you can also use the other darts if you really want to. Orochi's kind of sporadic in this game, so that's why I really don't use it, honestly. You can also use the darts to start and end combos. One thing I forgot to mention when you're using Gunvolt Shuffle is that while you're shuffling enemies around, always to recharge so that way you don't overheat yourself while you're doing this tactic. Crash Bolt and Dragon Sphere are two new abilities that Gunvolt gains in this game, and both of them are actually pretty damn useful. Crash Bolt is definitely going to be the most used one out of the two, as the sheer amount of utilities SP attack has is completely insane. Not only being a combo ender, it can give you iframes to attacks you normally get hit by, does good damage, and the fact that this doesn't take any of your SP makes it even better. Sure, you could just normally double or triple kill enemies with your flash field, or you could stack enemies with each other, get on top of them, and crash bolt them, which will reward way more kudos than you doing a regular double or triple kill. Dragon Sphere is a displacement special that does damage over time instead of instantly. But I don't think this SP attack is just as good as Crash. I think it still has its use, like giving you iframes like Crash, and it blocks some incoming projectiles so you can reload. Using these in regular stages are pretty good, but in the DLC special attack stages, these attacks are very helpful to hitting S+. That's all I really wanted to talk about when it comes to Gunvolt. I mean, nothing really changed as much aside from getting two really good abilities and special spamming being fixed, meaning that you actually have to play the game now, which I really do appreciate. Ah yes, Acura, probably my favorite Gunvolt character to play in the whole series. While Gunvolt has a passive strategic playstyle, his is more dynamic and fast paced. Not saying you can't play Gunvolt like that. Acura focuses on playing in the air rather than the ground, and unlike Gunvolt, focuses on aerial combos. The goal with him is to stay in the air as much as possible and avoid touching the ground unless obviously the game forces you to. The general gameplay when playing Acura is, like I said, hop around the level and kill enemies in combos. You want to weaken enemies with your blast and then finish them off with an EX skill of your choice. The best EX skill to get the job done is Hailstorm, as it's quick and doesn't cost a lot of your EX gauge. Of course, there's other good skills for the minor situations like Stellar Spark, Twin Bunkers, and Broad Circuit. Hydro Zapper has a niche to be able to push enemies back to set up guard counter or guard counter EXs, and Vestige Raid is also a solid EX. What about Vampire Fang? Use it for healing, I guess. I honestly don't know any practicality for it, honestly. So yeah, that's my opinion on that EX skill. The other ones are good, but that one is just okay at best. Bullet management is really important because it allows you to be able to stay in the air as much as possible, but also dash in and out of situations. You get bullets back from rebounding on walls, dashing into enemies, and dashing on the ground. Of course, reloading on the ground is an option, but that's only when you are on the ground, and we don't want to do that. Also, don't wall jump, because this won't be fixed until Luminous Avenger X, but if you do wall jump, it will reset your aerial combos back to start. Another thing too is that don't go for reload crushes. There's absolutely no point in going for this stuff because you don't even get any benefits off of it, and plus not only that, you are susceptible to landing, and you definitely do not want that to happen. Now, I did mention this earlier in the video, but I did mention something about guard counter and guard counter EXs, and I think it's the time to talk about the differences between them. Now, a guard counter is an effect that happens when you kill an enemy with an EX attack when an enemy projectile is blocked by your flash shield. Below your EX bar, you can see the shield icon indicating that your flash shield is up and ready to block an incoming projectile. A guard counter EX is when you kill multiple enemies in a single guard counter, which results in a much higher Kudos gain rather than how much you would get than regularly killing each enemy one by one. This requires some timing to get used to, but this adds more depth and strategy to Acura's playstyle, and he even has the EX skills to compensate for it, like Hailstorm, Twin Bunkers, and Broad Circuit. Look at this gameplay example with me using a guard counter EX and not using one. As you can see, I gain more Kudos rather than just killing the enemies normally with an EX. So this is actually some actual depth and tech into his gameplay, something that you will definitely be able to notice if stages set up stuff like this for you and take advantage of it in the score attack stages and the DLC stages. Now, I could go on forever talking about every little detail about this game's tech and depth, but I think it would be better if you guys try and experience it yourselves. Gunvolt 2 has, I think if you combine Gunvolt and Acura stages and different layouts, over 20 plus stages and the DLC, which is a lot for a game that you can complete in 1 or 2 hours. The DLC stages are tough and require you to know the insides and outs of the game's mechanics, which I highly recommend you guys give a shot. Although, fuck DLC Carrera as Gunvolt, that stage is insanely hard, holy shit. Luminous Avenger X is honestly going to be the shortest part of this video, as honestly there isn't much tech to talk about, as this game is honestly Acura's most simplistic design in the series. I do have this game ranked as my second favorite Gunvolt game between Gunvolt 2 and Gunvolt 3, so I do hold it in high regard. However, I will talk about the few things that are interesting to note about it. Guard counters have been removed from the game, but funny enough, they are in the game's files, as Lola has a line about you using a guard counter. Unfortunate, but we can't do anything about it, sadly. Wall jumps now will not reset your combo, and not only that, EX skills in this game are now separated to their own different bar, which is great, but sadly the EX skills in this game are very Oh, there's also those emblems that give you a gigantic amount of Kudos, so be on the lookout for those in the level. Acura plays pretty much the same way he did in Gunvolt 2, but now has a more emphasis on speed and clearing levels faster, and it's basically you spamming Orbital Edge the whole game, which is basically this game's most broken and brain dead ability I've ever seen in a Gunvolt game. Okay, maybe Acura's version of a broken brain dead ability, but Orbital Edge basically covers everything you need in this game, to be honest. The only other EXs you would use in this game are Stellar, Anchor, and Cyclone for some extra height and stall. That's really it. The others are kind of just whatever, honestly. Like, hell, even Photon Detonator is not even that good of a skill to use at all. And the other two are just whatever. They're really just whatever. Stellar Spark Pause Buffer Attack. When using Stellar Spark after weakening an enemy, if you pause the game and while the game is paused, as the skill is going off, you can nick a bit more Kudos than normally from enemies. Honestly, I don't do this because I see absolutely no point in doing this unless you are omega tryharding to get high score. And even then in this game, you are going to be getting really high scores. given how the game has more emphasis on speed and all that stuff. Anchor Nexus is a niche EX skill that can feel clunky the first time you use it, but it has some unique ways of being used. Primarily when locking onto an enemy, as if you have the Anchor Nexus on an enemy, you'll be able to aerial dash towards that enemy when they have the threat connected to them. This can be useful to avoid dashing into the wrong enemy or messing up certain combos, or dashing straight into that enemy and then canceling the EX skill before it goes off in order to go ahead, tag that enemy, and basically shoot them down and finish them off with the EX skill of your choice. I personally like Anchor Nexus myself, but I think it's niche for the most part, honestly. And the last tech is wall bonking. Wall bonking is basically you consistently dashing into the wall, which allows you to cancel the dash animation and go straight upwards, what makes it so that you can keep the offense without wasting time. This tech is mainly used in speed runs a good amount and regular runs too, so it's not a bad idea to use it at all. Honestly, that's all I think is noteworthy when it comes to Luminous Avenger X. Again, it's a pretty good Gunvolt game, which is in my top 3, but probably is the least technical of the series as they remove guard counters, and the EXs in this game compared to 2 and the next game are very mediocre. I wish someone would mod this game to make them better, as I see some good potential with them, especially Photon Detonator, because you could do some things with Photon Detonator, but unfortunately, it is not the reality to be. Luminous Avenger X2 has had a very weird reputation ever since being released last year, and this game hit its first year anniversary in January. You get people who actually like the game and think it's great, but then you have people who think this game is just as bad as Mega Man X7 of all things. I'm one of those who actually likes this game, and this might be a hot take, but I think this is one of the most technical versions of Acura between all 3 of his versions that have been out. And I'm going to explain why when we get into the tech. Acura has been changed a good amount in this game. Now you cannot bullet dash 3 times anymore before overdrive. Now you can only bullet dash 1 time and then you're empty. And now he has a new melee attack called the Razor Wheel. This bad boy is how you're going to get to 1k Kudos, which allows you to go back to the Acura playstyle from Luminous Avenger X1. And now he has a dash bar instead of bullets, which is actually nice. I do like the bar change. Razor Wheel has some tech to it that I'll always be talking about in this video. But here's a tip for you guys that you guys should know. At the start of every level, you cannot quick razor the first enemy that appears on screen. However, what you can do is get more Kudos by tagging the first enemy, finishing them off with an EX skill, preferably Rolling Ripper or Optic Barrier. But as you are doing that, tag the other enemy and finish them with an EX skill as well. You should also be doing this when you're near overdrive so you can keep up your combo to farm more points, and you'll be able to, get a better score at the end of the stage. Locking on and off on enemies is actually pretty useful. When you dash into an enemy, you will obviously lock onto them. However, in this game, if you press the special button, which will pull up your special attack, but if you don't use it, you remove the lock on the enemy. This has some benefits like in Hail Stage with a Blizzard segment, you can chip the enemies with your gun, then lock them off and razor them to get the plus 30, which is the quick razor. This is also useful in general in other stages that you wouldn't be able to normally get the plus 30 quick razor in, but because you are doing the lock on lock off tech, you are able to get that off. Hail Stage is a big example I use for it because Hail Stage is middle part in the first segment, can get annoying if you're not using this tech, honestly. Razor Wheel has some end lag to it that can make it risky to use in situations when racking up points or boss fights. Luckily, you can cancel this end lag with the EX skill Whirling Copter. When you are in mid combo or end combo of Razor, input Whirling Copter. As you are inputting this EX, you can cancel it into a bullet dash. If you do it in rapid succession, you basically move faster than you would by just spamming the one bullet dash that you have. The best way to practice this, in my opinion, is hanging guarding 2 and just do it for 5 minutes to see how it feels. Once you get the rhythm down, you will be able to do it consistently, and you will also be able to move more fluently through the stages and get through the stages faster also. Recoil Dash has its niche uses like stunning enemies to kill them in time for a quick razor, or shuffling enemies into other enemies to kill them in groups with Nexus. It can be used versus the site, but it's one of those you don't have to use this tech in order to achieve X rank at all. Okay, one more thing before we wrap up Luminous Avenger X2. I feel like this is worth mentioning, but for some reason in this game before with patch, you could mash the shoot button to kill bosses and enemies faster because the mash cap was kind of non-existent. But they fixed this, so now the real reason I would use this is to chip down enemies quicker for EX kills. And with that, Luminous Avenger X2 is done. I personally think Luminous Avenger X2 is a misunderstood game because of how it goes for a more technical approach rather than a simple pick up and play type game. I highly recommend you guys check out BK Brent, who demonstrates just how much you can do in this game, and plus this game's overall potential when you play it at a technical level. Alright folks, we're here. We're at the final game in the series, as of now, until obviously we get like, Luminous Avenger X3 or Gunvolt 4. But it's Azure Striker Gunvolt 3, the last game we're going to be talking about in this video, and is the latest installment in the series. Gunvolt 3 is close to being my official second favorite game of the franchise, and yes, I know the story is a disappointment, but I look more towards gameplay, and this gameplay delivered for sure. Again, like I said earlier, I will not be talking about Kirin, XX, or Zed, but of course I will be talking about the main lead characters being Kirin and Gunvolt. This game is still somewhat new as there's more tech to discover that hasn't been unfolded, but we will be talking about what we do know that is present within the game. Before talking about Kirin, I want to cover Gunvolt first. Gunvolt in this game is extremely busted due to the game's lore. He has infinite jumps, Flash Field is permanently on him, he melts enemies and bosses down really fast, and he has a new dash attack that does good damage and can even kill bosses when they're at low HP. This comes at a cost though. Gunvolt is tied to the feathers gauge, meaning that anything you do will decrease this gauge. Getting hit will decrease this gauge. If you use an SP attack, you will revert back to Kirin unless you kill a boss, or in Denizer, it will use up your gauge. Gunvolt's Kudos gain is also nerfed compared to Kirin's, so to compensate for this, they introduced a Gunvolt exclusive rank called Azure Striker rank, which is basically beat the whole game as only Gunvolt. Well, the whole stage, not the whole game. That's Denizer, that's a different mode. But how do you do that exactly? Well, the same way you would get anything going with GV, getting multi-kills to increase the gauge, managing your feathers gauge. Spark Dash is a solid chipping tool for bigger enemies to set up for some combos with Arc Chain, and if against bosses does good damage and saves you some gauge. Yeah, I don't have much when it comes to talk about Gunvolt. Sadly, it's just that he's the game's uber broken mechanic that is put behind a gauge due to story reasons. Now to talk about the last character in this video, which is basically Kirin. Kirin is basically the main character that you will be playing with in stages if you're obviously going for the S++ rank, as she has the most Kudos gain in Merciless difficulty. Kirin's main gameplay style is kind of a mixture between Gunvolt and Acura, but is unique in her own ways. She is the series' first sword character, which you'll be using in stages and boss fights. The reason why I say she's a mixture of the two characters is because while she has GV's whole you want to kill enemies in one go style, she also primarily will want to be in the air the whole time like Acura to preserve her chain, but while also using her melee abilities to her advantage. Talismans are going to be your main method of tagging, but they have certain properties. You have a max 7 talismans, meaning you can only lock into 7 enemies, excluding normal and hard mode. These talismans don't actually do damage, but what they do is make enemies' health go to red, so that when you are ready to unleash Arc Chain, they will die in one hit. Beefier enemies may take 3 to 4 talismans, so keep that in mind, but this is where Kirin's Charged Talisman comes into play, as it saves you some talismans to allow better combos. Arc Chain's scoring system works off how many enemies are caught in a chain. The starting enemy in the chain will start in aerial, which is plus 15, and will multiply depending on the chain level. But a quick aerial is enemies that are killed after the initial enemy is killed, but now will be plus 20 and whatever your chain multiplier is. This is where it's important to kill multiple enemies at the same time to gain more points. However, when starting a chain with a ×2, do not kill 2 enemies at the same time. You want to rack up your chain, because if you don't rack up your chain, you're going to be getting way more or less points. This is ideal that you basically kill the first enemy in the stage with an Arc Chain, then kill the other one with an Arc Chain to start the ×3. Then after that, you can go ahead with the ×4. Another thing I'm going to say when it comes to enemies who require more talismans is do not try and Arc Chain chip them, as it will reduce how many points you will get from killing them in one go. Kira can also jump after she does Arc Chain, which is nice to consider, so keep that in mind when you're going through these levels. Now let's talk about something that kind of bothers me when it comes to people saying Kirin's swordplay isn't really useful. Once you have all of Kirin's sword skills, her swordplay actually starts to open up when you get abilities like Air Tensho, Resin, and Aizen. Air Tensho and Resin are really good tools to start in chain combos. Something I didn't mention in the Arc Chain portion is that you actually get your chain started faster at certain parts, mainly the beginning if you use Resin and Tensho on one enemy, then you proceed to Arc Chain the other enemy, which results in an Arc Chain cancel, leading to extended combos towards other smaller enemies. Resin is one of the most notable for this, as it has a spinning animation, which sometimes the hitbox of this move surprises me, being able to do certain things. Then there's Rinse and Rapid, which makes you go faster if you hold the D-pad down, which can rack up enemies that are in a straight line. Air Tensho can be used as a stall if you use your jump, and also gains extra height. Aizen has some niche cases, mainly in boss fights, to iframe through some boss attacks like Chiron's and Azuma's SP attacks, or Dragon Bolt's electric ground attack. Normal sword attacks also can be used to end and start combos if the enemies is talisman or they are weak enemies. One thing I will say is, do not be hesitant to use these techniques to get higher scores and make the experience better, as it makes Kirin look more interesting. Gunvolt 3 is still relatively new, so that's all the tech that I have to talk on when it comes to Kirin and Gunvolt. If any new tech is found, or I potentially update the guide with an extra part, I'll be willing to do so. Also, if you're going to ask me about image pulses, consult yourself to the Gunvolt wiki, because I don't know anything about them. I honestly don't. Okay, so throughout the video, you may have noticed that I didn't cover how to tackle boss fights, and that's honestly because I wanted to focus more on stages and techniques, but also I wanted to potentially make videos talking about the boss fights from each game and what to do, and I will do that obviously in my no damage series, as I do plan to no damage all of these games and put them up on YouTube. But that's going to be it for the video, in all honesty. This is my first time actually making a video like this ever in my life. I wanted to take a shot at it, as Gunvolt is one of my favorite 2D games. Plus, I feel like these games are very underrated and should be played by a lot more people. These games you can pretty much find on every platform: Steam, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. So let me know what you guys think. Leave any feedback if you have any to help me improve these guides or help me improve the channel. But with that out of the way, stay vaulting and get them high ranks. Good luck, everyone.